Well, here we are on a bit of a windy day, so I had to find some shelter to get out of the wind and make sure that we had some audio that you could actually listen to and completely understand. So to follow up with where we started with our introductory video, we're going to get into a little bit more of the details of the mechanics of what I call the classic swing. And what we want to start off with is I really don't know, and I'm guessing there's going to be some folks that are rather novice and or beginners to the game, and there's going to be people that are intermediate and some other folks that are going to be very polished in their golf games. So I want to be able to give some information that's helpful to all of those across that spectrum. And so what I would want to start off with, for those that are more of the beginners or novice, and even for those that maybe have played for a lot of years, it's very important that we start with a proper grip. And the way that I tell people about the grip, it's very much like the clapping of the hands together and onto the club. It's not quite that simple, but what we want to do is we want, for a right-handed golfer, we want that left hand for the grip to follow right along the underside knuckles of the upper knuckles of the palm below the fingertips, all the way through. Wrap around here, and we want to have, if you're looking from the top, about 2.5 knuckles showing, but it really comes down to a preference. You just don't want it too strong this way or too weak this way. You want it to have in a nice spot. You've got the thumb that's not completely down the shaft, although there are people that do have what's called a long thumb shaft. It's more like in this position here. And what I use is the Varden grip, which is an overlapping grip. So between my index finger and middle finger, I will place my pinky. And I am very much into these two fingers, middle two fingers, and my trigger finger on top of the shaft. And then I just fold the thumb into the V of my palm, and there you have it. So as to how much strong or weak that grip is, it can be a personal preference, but of course if you cross the line, it can be detrimental as well. So when I take my grip, I have, for me anyway, the V of the right hand is coming right up to my right shoulder, and then the V of my left hand is pointing up towards my chin, and that gets me the rollover that I like, and it gets me about in that 2.5 knuckles look. And then what you want to make sure of is that when you place that grip together, pull your forearms together here, and you put the grip together, you want to make sure that once you take your grip, that club face is straight up and down. And because that's what needs to be square when you get down to the impact zone. And so you want to make sure that your grip is in good shape there. Now, we'll get on to some of the swing stuff that I talked about verbally when I did our introduction. And as I stated in the first video, the classic swing is an inside takeaway. Inside takeaway this way. It is not necessarily what they have with the modern swing, where they're bringing it back and the club head stays outside of the hands. The classic swing is we're loading here to the inside. And the modern swing, this is a big variance between the modern swing and the classic swing, is many in the modern swing, and it's starting to change a little bit now, but many in the modern swing, they wanted to keep this right knee bend as they're turning, as they're loading into. They load their weight into the right instep. They keep the bend here and rotate the hips So they're pushing against the inside right instep. And there were, I guess the characterization of that and why people feel that way, what they would say is, well, it's like your spine is a spring, and you're creating all of that tension to unleash the spring. And personally, I couldn't disagree more. The spine is not a spring. It is not metal. It's not a spring to where it flexes and reflexes back into a position without any real harm to the swing. We're talking about the human body and the spine, cartilage, bone, sinew, muscle, and down through the middle of that vertebrae, all the way down that spine, and to your limbs are nerves. And the spine of the human body is not a spring, and it is good to keep that pressure off of the back. When you're putting pressure onto it with this knee bend, that's putting a lot of pressure on the back of a player, and I don't think that's good. The other thing is that when you have this pressure on the instep and you're rotating it back with shoulders, and you're getting very minimal hip turn. And I don't think that's good either. I think we want to get as much power and turn as we can to load and get up to the top of the swing, and then deliver all of that power and physics that we've created with that. So with regard to the classic swing, what we want to have happen is we want to have connection, right? So we want to have our forearms in tighter to each other, the pit or elbow area, the interior of our elbow area, we want those facing out, okay, so we're in a nice connected position, and we're keeping this upper right arm tightened in with the torso so everything is together and in sequence, okay? As I spoke about in the introductory video, the more connected we are in this manner, the better and more consistent we're going to be when we come down to strike the ball. Whereas if we get, as I also spoke about in the original video, we get this depth and width that people try to go with, all right? We've got this disconnect, and we've got to reconnect that when we're coming down, and that creates a need for timing. And that's extremely, extremely difficult for people to do unless you're a professional, where you can just beat ball after ball after ball and get that timing. But you know, you go play golf one day and you play great, and it's like, aha, I've got it all figured out. And then later, the next day you come out and you can't hit your rear end with both hands. So that has to do with the timing issue and what's required to get the timing done. So I don't like we're in an athletic stance here with weight on the balls of our feet, like we're fielding a ball as a baseball player. We want to make sure that we keep that knee bent. That's a more athletic position. No, I don't agree with that. That's my opinion. Others can do very well with that, and that is their opinion. What I like to see is we drop everything into this right heel, and as we do that, we get weight on the back side and push that hip back, that right hip back. Now watch what's happening here. I am not even, excuse me for the traffic noise, I am not even really doing anything to generate the backswing wind other than just dropping that hip. My arms and shoulders and the connection between the upper arm and the torso, all of that has not even changed, right? That is just static, and I'm getting a pretty big piece of power already started with shoulder turn by just using my hips. And I think that is a very, very important situation as well to be able to accomplish in that hip and dropping that back. They talk about rotation a lot. Everybody hears about it. Shoulder rotation, hip rotation. I don't call what happens with the hip as a hip rotation. I call it a hip load. And if we want to rotate, if you stand straight, up and down, club in hand, and you want to just rotate your hips, and you do that, think about what that feels like. Memorize what that feels like. Get the feel of that when you're actually just trying to rotate your hips. Now, do not rotate the hips and just drop back onto the heel of the right foot, straightening out that leg, and push that hip back. That's a completely different feeling, a much more stress-free feeling. There isn't any working of the front muscles, the back muscles, front of the stance, back of the stance. There really isn't any of that. It's just dropping that right hip back. And that is something as far as we want to have leave the golf swing is tension. We want to make sure that we have fluid swing. We aren't worried about where the ball goes, which is a very, very hard thing to actually try to pull off, because it's hard not to worry about, okay, where am I going to hit this ball? But when you get to that point, as Dr. Bob Rotella said famously, the less you care, the better you'll do. Meaning, the less you worry about where you hit the ball or where you throw the ball, or whether it's baseball, golf, or what have you, trying to hit the ball, the less you worry about it, the better you're going to be. You're just going to let your instincts take over, right? So we have the hip load. We have the hip load. Now we also have a shoulder rotation. I will say that the shoulders is a rotation, but I will also say that it is also a load, because this right shoulder is essentially getting pulled back with the right hip. One piece takeaway connected. I'm not necessarily rotating. I'm moving that right shoulder back. I don't want to have my head be moving way off the ball. So I want to stay pretty static with my head directly over the ball. Pull that right hip back, pull the shoulder through, and the head does not move. I really didn't do any rotating. I just loaded. And the analogy that I use, and it's the same as when we're delivering the club head to the ball, is if I am going to punch somebody and I want to make the most powerful punch I can, and I've got to do it from this position, what I'm going to do is I'm going to load that hip backwards to the rear. I'm going to take that shoulder, and I'm not necessarily going to rotate it. I'm going to load it, and then I'm going to pop you with the palm of my hand or my fist, okay? So I'm not trying to come in and hit you like this with a rotation, right? That would hurt as well. If you had to slap somebody, they're going to feel it, right? But when you compare that to pulling the hip back, pulling the shoulder back, and then pushing off, unleashing the elbow, bringing the shoulder forward along with the hip, that's going to create a blow that's going to be a heck of a lot more damaging than a slap with a rotation. Can we agree on that? I think that we can. So that's essentially what we're going to leave it with today, is the load of the hips, back heel, hip going back, connection with the right arm with the upper torso, right upper arm with the torso, loading. Then we're going to take it to the top of our swing in the next segment, okay? So that's something, even with your swing today, even though we're going to go through the classic swing in phases, even though that is the case, these two items with the hip, the weight distribution on the right heel, on the takeaway, the connection, and the loading of the shoulders and the hips together, that is going to feel a lot different than what you're doing currently, I believe. And it's also going to create a situation where we're delivering that club back in with that overhand right, like I talked about, the punch back into the ball. And it's really the right hand that's going to do most of the work that is going to be increased biomechanically by the hip, the upper body, the shoulders unwinding and given almost that. You think about people in who do the karate with the boards, and they want to smash the boards, break the boards. That's essentially what we're doing here. And once we come in the contact of the ball, we do some things with our forearm and essentially our palm. That is something that I'll talk about more next time. But as of right now, that's all we want to work on, right? And we want to make sure that we've got a nice, smooth swing, no tension in the arms. We push back, we load it here, and then we let it go.